I used to spend so much time tracking down high-quality learning experiences, especially once I started to move past the basics. But nowadays, man, you can learn things like design systems, storytelling, leadership, UI engineering directly from top operators in the industry. And it's all happening on Maven.com. That's even where you're going to find my advanced Figma training program. It's all cohort-based courses, which means everything's really hands-on. There's live sessions. You'll get access directly to the instructor, which means it's easily the best way to invest in your career. So head to maven.com to learn more. That's Maven. Okay, now on to the episode.
We'll look back at the sparkle icon as the equivalent of the floppy disk. And I think the reason is AI is just going to start to become so deeply woven into the fabric of products. I don't think we're going to be in the future clicking a button to think about needing to use AI.
Yeah.
I actually think it's going to become the default. And I think it's going to take time to get there. But again, where we've landed is we wanted to ease people in, create some familiarity, and give them a starting point and complete optionality to use AI if you want to or not.
Welcome to Dive Club. My name is Rid, and this is where designers never stop learning. This week's episode is a special one because it was filmed live at Config with the one and only Jordan Singer. So the conversation is a deep dive into AI and the future of Figma. We talk about how the team navigated the early idea maze, learn how the new Make Designs feature actually works under the hood, and we even get a little glimpse into Jordan's creative process and how he likes to hack on top of the Figma codebase. But let's start this conversation by going all the way back to the summer of 2023. The Diagram acquisition has just been announced, and Jordan and team are getting ramped up at their new roles at Figma.
After we did the traditional Figmate onboarding and getting affiliated with all of the way the team works and the setup and all of that, it was a lot about ideating. What are we going to build? How do we create a roadmap that feels really, really in tune with what we expect designers to want that solve real problems? And that was a crazy process. You know, the interesting thing that was looming in the background a bit was the Adobe deal that was still sort of up in the air, going through the regulatory stuff. But, you know, we tried to make sure we had laser focus on how we were going to bring AI into Figma design in a really thoughtful way and not just sprinkle it in here and there, but try to solve real problems. We did so many design sprints trying to understand from different designers across different teams what AI features they were thinking about or felt the technology could really excel at. And we ended up narrowing down a really, I think, strong list of initial features that we just saw, launched yesterday. That process of figuring out which teams to work with, forming new teams, getting a bunch of people working on AI was really a year-long journey to get to this point. But I'm so excited by where we landed. And I think we've got a lot of features that help improve efficiency for designers, allow non-designers to participate. And I think we're only just scratching the surface.
I want to get into this narrowing process because I think that's very interesting because AI can kind of do everything. But maybe even first, I like how you right away jumped into solving problems. And it reminds me of a tweet that you had where you talked about the danger of starting with the technology and then working backward to the experience.
Yeah.
What were you doing to make sure that you didn't fall into that trap with AI?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard. I think when I was working on Diagram with our team, the whole spirit of Diagram and where it originated was there is this new technology called AI. It's really powerful. How do we apply that to design? And it's sort of anti what I said in that tweet. Designers are really opinionated. They give us feedback all the time. They really care about our products, and they make it very well known when they don't like the way things work and all of that sort of thing. And so we were able to marry a lot of those, complaints and feedback that we get with what we knew the technology was capable of to arrive at some of our feature set. So it's very tricky with AI. I think a lot of companies actually go through this process of, oh my gosh, we need to have an AI story. How do we do it?
Yeah.
Let's slap it on. Let's add a sparkle everywhere. And I think with the features we landed on, we very much tried to do a couple of things. There's a big focus around efficiency, and it was thinking about when do you jump outside of Figma to do something that we could actually pull into Figma itself that keeps you in the flow, that doesn't create distraction, that, frees up time for you to be even more creative. Just as powerful as the technology is, I think there's a lot of interesting things to be said about new designers who were new to the technology, that were naive about how it works, and just know it as this really magical piece of technology that they can dream even bigger than they could have ever before. And a lot of really fascinating ideas came from that too.
Let's drill into that then, because you have these high level visions for what AI can unlock. You talked about the early design sprints, and very tactfully, you have to essentially point a team at some chunk of the spectrum of opportunities and actually figure something out and bring back some kind of a learning. So how did you even structure those early experiments and prototypes? And what were the early insights that you were gathering that helped you to narrow down the spectrum?
Yeah, I think the culture at Figma is very much, there's this principle around run with it. And one of the things I did right out of the gate coming from Diagram was we were exploring a lot of different ideas. And I love to make prototypes, and especially in Figma, you can create a widget or a plugin that interfaces directly with the canvas.
Mhm.
And a lot of it was trying to take some of the learnings from Diagram and what we experimented with around even things like renaming layers back then, or tweaking copy using AI and not having to jump out to ChatGPT to integrate it into the design process. And so there was a lot of prototyping really early on that took place to show people what was possible and actually get buy-in.
Hmm.
So by the time we were doing some of these design sprints, I think you have to balance both what we know the technology is capable of and what we've seen other maybe creative tools do and get inspired by some of that, but also what is Figma uniquely good at? And some of those things include design systems. That's one of the things that I think is really core to the way Figma works. And you can get inspired by a lot of ideas to up-level design systems and how AI might be able to consume it, make it faster to create design systems, things like that. So we spit out, I think I recall, 25 plus ideas in one design sprint, and just continued to refine and make sure that we had a set that we knew is both achievable technologically with today's AI tech, but also tried to solve real design problems that even designers at Figma face every single day designing some of the core editor. And so there's a bit of intuition paired with what is the technology capable of, and it's finding the union, the marriage of those two things that I think AI starts to really shine.
Hmm. I want to return to the design systems. I'm going to put a pin in that for a second. Were there certain inflection points or breakthroughs in that early ideation process that added a lot of clarity and helped you arrive at what the roadmap was and ultimately what you shipped yesterday?
Yeah, we were lucky as we're working on the core Figma design editor and trying to figure out how to apply AI there. FigJam AI got a long head start, and we wanted to ship something in AI. Figma up to that point late last year, I think in September, October, hadn't had any AI features quite yet. And one of our very first AI ships was a widget, just as a way to get something out really quickly that helped you sort of use Chat GPT in this node-based way inside of FigJam, which was really fun. And we learned a lot about how to apply AI in that sense, just to get something out there and start learning.
Yeah.
The first real implementation of AI in Figma was actually FigJam AI and generating templates. And we learned a lot about how to strive for a really high quality bar. I think in Figma, if we're doing something like generating designs, we strive to be the gold standard of what those designs look like. And the FigJam team learned a lot about ensuring that when you're generating a template, it's not this very, basic placeholder, thing that's not all that useful, but is actually something genuinely useful that you can use as a starting point to run a meeting or a brainstorm. And there was so much quality work that happened there. We took a lot of learnings from that to apply to things like our generative UI features. And we spent a lot of time making sure that as we're generating designs, for example, the designs are actually really good, and you can theme them and make them exactly what you want them to look like. So quality is something that, prior to joining Figma, I hadn't really thought a whole lot about. I was thinking more about AI as the technology and what were the quick wins that we could ship in the form of plugins. But it turns out when you're trying to productionize AI features, there's a whole new stratosphere of quality that you have to try to reach. And we worked really, really hard on that.
We sourced a bunch of questions from Twitter. Obviously, we're not even going to be able to get to a fraction of them. But one theme that did come up is an interest in what was deprioritized. So what were some of the early explorations that maybe you were even excited about that ultimately didn't ship? And can you talk a little bit about why you made that decision?
So one of my personal favorite features in Figma AI as a whole is actually visual search. And I know you talked to Vincent about that a lot. And it turned out that we're really inspired by GitHub Copilot and the way that it's sort of this ambient AI that works in the background. And that took a fascinating trajectory from starting out with, can you sort of create this Copilot autocomplete experience on the canvas, which turns out to be a really tricky interaction and design problem that you don't want to be disruptive to a designer's workflow by plopping things on the canvas as they're working. You want to make sure that the suggestions that you're giving are really intelligent and actually are predictive of what might come next. And in the process of building that particular feature, which we thought one day might end up shipping, we had built in the background this really powerful search and way to connect dots across visually similar designs. And that's an example of something that we were dead set on sort of shipping some kind of Copilot type experience that ended up manifesting into a really powerful search feature that is actually my absolute favorite AI feature that we've shipped. And AI and search is kind of this unsexy thing, but I think we put a spin on it that really provides a lot of utility for designers inside of Figma. So now, not only can you find files or components, you can find raw frames that are floating across Figma that were previously undiscoverable. So we took this really winding path of, let's figure out this like suggestive Copilot experience and found there was this golden nugget, a sort of sub module, a sub piece of that feature that was critical to making that work because we couldn't quite crack the experience at the time and standed it up as its own independent AI feature. And I think people are going to be really happy and excited about that one.
Quick side note, this winding path that Jordan's talking about is even more interesting than he's letting on. So we have an entire episode with engineer Vincent Vandermeulen dedicated to the story behind Figma's new visual search feature. It comes out next week and it is a good one, so you definitely don't want to miss it. All right, now let's jump back in.
It's interesting because when you even talk about what it looks like for designers to have an AI companion, you almost create this mental picture of, a little AI that follows you around on the canvas. And ultimately what you shipped, it doesn't really look like that. And I'm sure there are lots of little strategy pieces in there, but at the same time, you're also trying to almost design around a moving target because UI 3 is getting designed. We have a fundamental redesign of what the editor even looks like. So can you talk about the process of figuring out the entry point, but also just where AI lives at a systems level inside of the Figma product?
Yeah, as the UI 3 redesign in Figma was underway, it was only after that point that we started to think really deeply about where AI should live and where you should interface with it. And so what's really cool is UI 3 serves as a great foundation across all of our products today and future products that'll come, eventually, as this really fresh coat of paint that makes everything super consistent and cohesive and feels really fresh. And it was a really exciting opportunity to try to understand, how do we make sure that as we add AI to Figma, it's not like we're adding a sparkle icon in every single corner of the editor, but rather giving it one home where if you don't want to use AI, you never really have to think about it. You never really have to click into the sparkle menu where we've given a home that everything lives. But if you do want it, it's in one place that you can find everything. And as we ease people into AI inside of the design editor, we found it really important that you have this one recognizable place you can go to find all of those features. And we're still in the process of learning a lot about truly how valuable certain features might be, and if they're going to start to deserve higher visibility entry points in the properties panel or the layer panel or elsewhere across Figma. And as it's this brand new thing, again, you sort of just want to ease people in. The sparkle icon has become ubiquitous for AI. We had many debates as well about whether that should even be the icon. I recall joining early on when I said we shouldn't use the sparkle at all because AI should just feel really deeply integrated. But I do think we want to ease our way into people learning about our new capabilities and making sure that it's recognizable. And so that's how we managed to give it its own home in the new tool belt that's at the bottom of UI 3. And it turns out to be a really nice place just to capture a lot of the new AI functionality in a single place. You know where to go if you want to use these AI features. And over time, I certainly suspect that they're going to make their way much more deeply embedded in every single corner of Figma. But we want to be really thoughtful about it. We didn't just want to spray AI across the entire redesign. But one thing that I like to think about that I think is really cool is the new face of Figma, the new redesign comes with AI. It sort of ushers in this new era of Figma. And even in slides, it uses the UI3 foundation as well, which has that same AI home and entry point. And so I think that's going to be a consistent theme across all of our products is let's be really thoughtful about the ways that we weave AI into different parts of the core editors, but also make sure that you know where to go if you want to use AI. And if you don't want to think about it, you don't have to go there if you don't want to.
It's really interesting to hear that backstory because that was one of the biggest things that I was curious about is like, is it going to be a bunch of little instances tied to the specific operations that you're taking in the editor? I think it does make sense. And my big reaction even to yesterday's release is how unified now the three products feel. And I think it was not an easy design challenge, but I think you kind of nailed that. And it does make AI very accessible in the way that you've thought about it.
Yeah, I think the debate we had about the Sparkle menu was just thinking about, one, can we try something different? I think we saw that recently with Apple Intelligence. They went with this kind of unique looking symbol,
the
and
that is.
they renamed the acronym AI for Apple Intelligence and all of that sort of thing. But ultimately, I think it's just the ubiquitous symbol for AI. Again, we want to ease people into it. They're used to it across other products. It may very well change in the future. We'll see. One of my hot takes is that the floppy disk icon is representative of save in a lot of products. I think it's starting to be, deprecated, but I find that over time, I don't know, in how many years, 5, 10 years, we'll look back at the sparkle icon as the equivalent of the floppy disk. And I think the reason is AI is just going to start to become so deeply woven into the fabric of products. I'm kind of jealous of younger folks and kids who are growing up in this AI native era where documents write themselves, images generate themselves, designs might generate themselves. And I think that's an indication of what's to come, which is that as products evolve and think about incorporating AI, I don't think we're going to be in the future clicking a button to think about needing to use AI.
Yeah.
I actually think it's going to become the default. And I think it's going to take time to get there. But again, where we've landed is we wanted to ease people in, create some familiarity, and give them a starting point and complete optionality to use AI if you want to or not. And if you don't want to use AI, you have basically the same exact Figma experience that you've always had.
You talked about the debate with the sparkle icon. Were there other debates or things that you were really wrestling with behind the scenes that we would be unaware of after looking at a polished keynote?
Yeah, one of the features that actually came along quite late was rename layers. I think it was only as of maybe 3 months ago or so, maybe a little longer, that we finally decided, let's build this thing. There were prototypes floating around of rename layers that other engineers had built at Figma, because it turns out to be a very practical use case. Like, take something as tedious as having to come up one by one with layer names and have AI visually understand what things look like and come up with really reasonable names. But the question was just how practical is a feature like that? Does it provide real utility? But I think what's fun about Figma is we like to have fun and we like to create features that people get excited about and put joy on the roadmap. And rename layers, I think, is a perfect example of a feature where we most certainly didn't need to build it. Not everyone is going to use it, but it's a great example of something that I think saves you a lot of time. You don't need to think about naming every layer individually, and it's just fun. Even the way it streams in, it's just super fun. So that was a debate we had around should we build this or not, and ultimately we went with let's have fun, let's lean into the memes, and let's do it.
It's interesting because it's like, it's fun. You can also see a world where it actually does provide more context for the underlying models to be able to help in more effective ways, whether it's, drawing prototype noodles or whatever.
Yeah, rename layers is quite cool in the way that it works, which is that it tries to get a visual understanding of the inner groupings of the layers inside of a design. So it's first taking a look at the design as a whole and a visual understanding of what it might be, and then understanding the way you've grouped things and nested things, etc. And it's coming up with these really semantically intelligent names that end up giving you something that is not frame 87452. So I think it's an example of a really fun feature that we've added with AI, and there's certainly going to be more that we add on to it in the future as well.
Let's talk about the generative UI stuff. So obviously you've been thinking about this for a long time, but you're kind of second movers at Figma a little bit. Like, there are a lot of versions of this technology now in the landscape. So when you were kind of seeing what all was out there, what were some of the opportunities that you were identifying to make something that was not only effective, but also uniquely Figma?
When I first got my hands on GPT-3 in beta about 4 years ago, I was exploring a lot of Figma plugins at the time and just building kind of these one-off automation tools. And GPT-3 started going viral on Twitter. People were building incredibly amazing experiences using AI, and they were sharing their demos. And my headspace was in Figma and building plugins at the time. And I thought to myself, what does it actually look like to marry an AI model with an API and the Figma plugin API together? And the first thing my mind went to after connecting a few dots, I was working in design systems at Square at the time and building out these patterns and examples for other designers to use. And it turns out if you give AI a bunch of structure like design system components and ask it to piece something together for you, it does a pretty good job. So what I was able to do was come up with a demo that consumed a very simple design system. Given a prompt, it was able to translate what you wanted in words into a design on the canvas. And that was my earliest exploration with these AI models and generative design a while back. Now, in order to productionize something like that, it takes a lot of work. I was talking about, the process of creating quality in our AI features and outputs and making sure that they represent the gold standard of generative design. And so when we thought about doing it the Figma way, there were a few things we kept in mind. One was that internally, we call the team that works on this feature first draft. And that's very intentional. That's the way we view the feature to be, what it stands for, and what it does, which is that it gives you a first draft, a starting point, inspiration, ideas. It's not your final product. So that set the tone for what we ended up building, which is that it consumes a design system, and as you describe a prompt in words, it figures out what components to pull from and uses a few examples that we've put together that use those components from that design system to output a design for you on the canvas. And one of the great things about generative design inside of Figma is the output is on an infinite canvas. And what that means is that you can take all of the inner pieces, tweak them directly with direct manipulation, mess with the properties, pull out components, maybe use things from what it gives you and put them in your own designs, and just use it as a starting point, or give you thoughts about, oh, I hadn't thought of, using a card in this way, or I forgot about including, this in a tab bar. And it can really, inspire you with new ideas. It's absolutely not meant to give you the final product by any means. And I think we have a long way to go before we even start to get there, if we ever even do. But the other thing that's really core to generative UI and Figma is that it consumes a design system, because that's the way that we work as designers in Figma. We're typically not all that much drawing rectangles from scratch anymore when we're designing something. We've got the building blocks and the pieces already in place, and as we put together a screen, we already have our nav bars and our tab bars and our card components, and we just, sort of fit these Lego pieces together to create a design. And that's exactly how Make Designs works. It understands what components to use and pieces them together, overrides component properties, fills in variables for theming, and makes the use of the state-of-the-art in Figma design systems to give you a design that's a starting point for inspiration. And so that's the way we thought about it as we've been building it. And we're really excited about what it means for non-designers to be able to visualize their ideas for the first time. But also, even in the professional designer use case, you can give it an idea and maybe get inspired with something, and maybe it gives you a button and a card component that's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Let me tweak that and mess around with it. So we're really excited about what the future of generative design holds in Figma. And it's really important, first and foremost, that it works well with design systems. And I think that hints at the future where you'll be able to use it with your own design system as well.
I want to talk about jumping to get to the point where you're actually using your own system, but just even to clarify a little bit, because when I was originally seeing the feature, I didn't even realize that it was pulling from a design system that you internally built behind the scenes. Like, can you just talk about that a little bit more? Like, what did that take to pull off?
Yeah, we made the product decision pretty early on that in order to introduce this feature to Figma, you needed to be able to use it without having an existing design system. And that really speaks to the idea that we want to empower even non-designers to be able to get an idea on the canvas, a first draft. And so in the process of thinking through that, we knew that we had to build a design system that it worked with out of the box. And we decided that we want to let people generate both mobile apps if they want to and websites if they want to. So we had two absolutely amazing folks helping to do a ton of work to build these design systems that AI consumes. So a special shout out to Oscar on the Figma team and Max, who contracted with us to create these design systems that I think literally have 500 plus components in them, just so that we can make sure we cover a wide variety of use cases for people that want to use this feature out of the box. Now, that's not to scare anyone who wants to use this with their own design system in the future. If your design system has, 50 components in it, it's still going to work with that. But we wanted to create a proof of concept that worked with design systems out of the box again, so anyone can use it from day one and they don't need to bring their own library. There's a lot of work we need to do to make sure that it works really well with any arbitrary design system, which is quite the challenge in the future. But yes, we poured a lot of work into making sure that the first version outputs something great out of the box and you don't even have to have a library to start.
Hey guys, real quick, if you know me, then you know I love products. So I want to take just 30 seconds to tell you about 3 of my favorites. Now, anytime that I'm designing and building a website, you better believe that I'm going to use Framer. I made the switch recently and I'm never going back. Now, once it's time to animate my designs and showcase my work, that's when I'm going to use Jitter. It's like Figma, only for motion design. And every step of the way, I'm going to be using Raycast constantly. It's the cornerstone of how I use my computer and the way that I stay in flow while I work. Now, I hand-selected Framer, Raycast, and Jitter to partner with me so that I could do these interviews full-time. So if you want to show them some love, it would mean a lot. Okay, now on to the rest of the episode.
What are some of the challenges that you're gonna have to figure out to get to the point where I can hit this button and have it pull from my existing system?
Yeah, we even built some internal design tooling as we were building out components for the generative UI features to automatically wire up some of the component properties. For example, because we had so many different components, it turned out to be a lot of manual effort from so many people across Figma to get these design systems ready to be compatible with our feature. And a lot of the internal tooling we built was going through and figuring out for different text labels or icons to make them instance swappable or, provide the right component property for any given text layer. And so we built a lot of internal tooling to get to the point where these design systems were compatible with AI. And our goal is eventually to build that tooling into Figma itself so that, maybe in the click of a button, we don't know what it's going to look like yet, but you can take your design system and with very, very little effort, make it AI compatible so that you can start, generating from your very own design system. So there was quite a lot of manual effort just to get to this point, and it uses a design system behind the scenes that we've built and curated very carefully. But the goal, and I think a lot of the challenges that lie ahead are, we don't know what your design system looks like. We don't know how you've set it up. There's a million different ways to do it. And we want to be sure that we're really thoughtful about leveraging the existing work that you've done and not create any additional extra effort to make your design system compatible with AI.
So that's one opportunity that I think is clear, exciting. I know it's going to be a focus. When you look at yesterday's release, how else is it a building block? And what are the other types of opportunities that are kind of rattling around in your brain that you think you might be able to work towards as far as how AI operates inside of Figma?
I imagine we will very much start to work towards this world where AI experiences in Figma become sort of more ambient and happen in the background, and you're maybe not thinking about them. An example of that might be, right now you need to click a button in order to rename layers, but that might happen automatically for you in the future as you're working on your designs. And also, going back to the diagram days, I thought a lot about what does a collaborative AI look like that's more assistive and suggestive. It's in Figma's DNA that it's a collaborative multiplayer tool. And I think AI affords us the opportunity to think about a multiplayer experience where an AI is in your file, so you're not alone. And you can ask it to riff on ideas. If you're stuck on something, maybe give me a few options. Maybe it has a cursor. We don't know what it's going to look like, but I think there's so much opportunity we have to push on the interface of AI. And I'm really excited about what that looks like, and we'll have more to share eventually once we figure it out.
I want to learn a little bit more about your process of figuring it out then, because yeah, it's easy to imagine what that future can look like. I'm literally picturing like the diagram bento grid right now in my brain. How do you, as an operator, take something like that and start to prove things out and explore, like, especially as someone that has the ability to wear like the design and engineering hats? Can you talk a little bit about how that perspective shapes the way that you navigate the idea maze for these upcoming opportunities?
One of the ways that I like to prototype Figma features that I feel are quite out there is to take the Figma code base itself, which is very complex, which I still find very intimidating, and just hack my way through to maybe add a little AI thing here or there and make it work for one very specific scenario, but just try to inspire people. The way our build system works with GitHub is that when you create a pull request, it creates a shareable link that anyone can play with a live version of a Figma instance. And I love to sort of hack on top of the Figma code base and explore what would it look like if we did X, Y, or Z kind of thing and feel it out for real. I think prototyping Figma, if it were to be a static, traditional Figma prototype, you just cannot mimic all of the canvas nuances and interactions and all of the things you can do in the properties panel. you really need to emulate the real thing. And so oftentimes, if I'm thinking about some crazy idea, my process is to hack my way through the Figma code base, tack on some little AI feature, and try to get people excited about it. And I love doing that kind of thing, thinking about more vision oriented, asking, what if, what if we did this? And I think the best way to get buy-in is to show people a functional prototype that they can react to and be like, oh, wow, that's interesting, but I don't like how this works. Oh, I can tweak that real quick. And oh, I made updates based on some feedback I got. That's, I think, a really interesting way of emulating experiences that we can imagine building in the future by hacking on top of the Figma code base itself.
I take solace in the fact that you do find the code base intimidating, because we only see the shiny prototypes on Twitter. And I'm like, okay, if Jordan's intimidated, like, I'm feeling a little bit better about myself now. Let's zoom out for a little bit. You've been thinking about this set of problems, honestly, as much as, anyone. Over the last 4 years of exploring and tinkering, what are some of the ways that you're thinking about how AI will impact the future role of a designer has evolved?
I was very naive back then with the first prototype that I built, which was using GPT-3 to consume a design system and spit something out on the canvas. I wasn't really thinking about what the role of a designer in that world looked like. But ever since joining Figma and having used Figma for years and years and years and being dearly in love with the tool itself and realizing how much Figmates care about designers in our community, I think we're trying to be really thoughtful about the ways that AI weaves its way into Figma, making sure that we solve real problems and use cases and achieve that original vision of eliminating the gap between imagination and reality and truly making design accessible to everyone. I think those are two guiding sort of values, principles that we want to embody in the features that we build. As a designer, designing AI features in a design tool, that's a mouthful, it is never my intention or thought, and anyone for that matter that works at Figma on AI, it is never our intention or thought that we're here to replace a designer, ever. It's how do we make our workflows better? What do we get excited about that empowers new possibilities and frees up time to be more creative and be more human and apply our own craft? How do we remove the tedious and the mundane and the repetitive stuff that we do every day inside of the editor and just make design this thing that is so free-flowing and unlock your creativity like never before? That's the thing I think about a lot and I'm really excited about. AI, I think, has the opportunity to really empower new designers to design things that and get involved in the design process that they maybe never could have imagined or had access to, but also up-levels existing designers and frees up that precious time to be more creative and brainstorm and think through critical solutions. And so that's, I think, how my thinking has evolved, is just being much more empathetic about a designer. I'm a designer myself. I'm not trying to get rid of my own job.
It reminds me of one of the tweet responses to your question, and it was from Yannick, and he was talking about basically the skills that would be rewarded in an AI native design world. He mentioned curiosity. I'm curious if we could go a little bit deeper, like what other traits do you think will be highly valued for designers, where, you could kind of wake up on a Monday morning, open up your laptop and actually invest strategically into that world if we're not doing as much of the mundane work in Figma?
One of the ways I think about, perhaps over the course of a number of years, and the way a designer's role might start to shift, is doing less of the sort of in the weeds pixel pushing and nudging your rectangles 10 pixels at a time, but rather shifting more into being a creative director. And I imagine AI to be this thing in the future that, as you're working on a given screen or trying to solve a given problem, it might give you a bunch of ideas and starting points, and you could say, oh, this is interesting, and I like this piece of this, and I like this from that, and combine that to iterate and explore. I think iteration is crucial to the design process and exploring a really wide option space. And as a creative director, I think you're still going to have to apply your own human taste and intuition into what you think is good. AI is not going to be the deciding factor there. We're not going to be building products that AI has decided to ship on its own. It's still going to be that human intervention and that creative director role that is making the final call. Because ultimately, I don't quite know that AI will ever develop its own sense of taste or what that's going to look like in the future. But I know we as designers and humans possess that, and we want to make sure that we keep that intact and really respect that quality.
Couple more future-looking questions before I let you go. One is, you were one of the very first people that introduced me to the concept of dynamic interfaces and what that might look like in the future. I'd love to hear how your thinking has evolved on that. But also now specifically, since you've joined Figma, what do you think it looks like for designers to collaborate with AI on that type of experience, specifically in Figma?
My thoughts on dynamic interfaces are that I think there could very well be this world in the future where we visit a website or use an app and it updates its UI on the fly. It knows your preferences. It knows what you'd like. But those experiences still need to be designed. And there might be a design system that is a designer worked on where these dynamic interfaces are pulling from and piecing the UIs together. But I do think there could very well be this world where we're not designing these static mocks that get coded in this static way, but instead we're creating the building blocks for which products will, on the fly, adapt to the goal you're trying to accomplish. You can still be very opinionated about the way something looks or the way something should feel, but it's gonna perhaps generate that thing on the fly as you use it. And I think it's just representative of AI making its way into production and not necessarily the creation process, but consuming experiences and adapting to the way you like things to be. And so I think there's absolutely design and craft and Figma involved in that process. But when you're using an app on your phone in the future, maybe it's being dynamically reorganized and updated to feel the way that you like things to feel, for example.
I was at the first config where Soleo gave the closing keynote. He talked about design as the future of open source. And that was when Community was launched. It's a really big deal, right? And I think you all took a very big step in that direction that I didn't see coming, giving designers the ability to search the community within the editor. When you play that out in your mind, what are some of the long-term implications of that product strategy?
I think the ability to search through the community in the file, one, helps you stay in flow. As of today, you sort of have to go out to the community, explicitly duplicate a file, figure out if the thing you want is inside of it. But I think bringing the designs to you in the flow is only going to make it so that you get inspired and get the real layers of a certain mobile app or website that you're looking for. And I think it's very important to the way that we imagine you working across Figma, which is taking these experiences that were once kind of complex or convoluted and bringing them into the working file right in front of you so you don't have to jump out and do all of these complex operations. And searching the community using sort of the new search tech with AI, I think is really, really impressive. Now you can find designs and just by describing them by words, not having to first find a file or look by author, but just describe what you want and it'll come straight to you and you can get inspired with new ideas and use those real layers on the canvas. So it's, to me, all about just bringing that experience into the flow in your file so you don't get disrupted by having to jump out into an entirely new file. And I think it serves as the basis for a lot of really powerful search experiences to come.
Can we talk a little bit about your role at Figma? Because I think it's interesting because I anticipate that each sliver of the org probably wants to stand up their own features that all use AI. There's prototyping AI features, you have rename layers, all this, I'm sure underlying code connect stuff. So give us a little bit of an insight into what your role looks like and how you collaborate with all of these different functions.
I play a bit of this sort of systems role on the design team for AI. And there are, in fact, so many different teams across Figma, whether that's prototyping or, the core editor, you name it, that are thinking about how to apply AI to what they do. And one of the ways that the AI features manifested in UI3, again, was through that one place in the tool belt at the bottom. And I think that's reminiscent of one of the principles was let's create really consistent, cohesive experiences, no matter what feature you're using that's AI related. It's all in one place and it all feels very similar. Especially now that we have a new product in slides, AI also feels very similar to AI in the design editor. And you can imagine for future products as well, that'll stay true. So there's very much this systems role that I try to play, which is let's make sure even if different teams are building one-off kind of AI features, they all feel very consistent and cohesive, and I think can speak to the future of where we're headed, where as the experience changes and as we add new features, it all should feel the same and not feel like it came from a different team, but rather it came from Figma.
It's interesting because we talk a lot about like the future of how the products will evolve and the process will evolve, but AI's impact on orgs is interesting too, because I think in many ways, you're kind of a pioneer for this new type of role where, yeah, it's not going to be enough to just slap a chatbot on a product. Even now, that's not even like too future looking of a thing. So then how do you integrate AI across a larger product surface area in a way that is intuitive and consistent? I think you're kind of a prototype of this new horizontal role that in the same way, maybe like growth design or design systems is horizontal. This new type of AI systems designer is a horizontal role that I'm excited to keep an eye on in the future.
I think an interesting example of that, you mentioned chatbots. We managed entirely to avoid chat in this first wave of Figma AI.
Thank you.
Because you're welcome. We found really interesting ways that you can iterate back and forth with AI without having to have this sort of chat experience. And in brief design explorations and prototypes, we haven't quite found it natural enough yet to stick a chat experience alongside the canvas. I imagine one day we might get there, and LLMs happen to be very good at this back and forth, message style experience. But it's just something you see across every single AI product. And when I look at a chat experience, I'm just like, ugh, I have to come up with what to say and talk to this fake personality. We've avoided that entirely in this initial set of Figma AI. And I think it's really, indicative of our design team and just trying to think very differently and embed Figma AI in such a way that it feels natural inside of the editor.
And not only avoid it, but I was so excited to see little patterns like the quadrant where you're able to drag and customize the output and one-click theming. And I'm excited to see where you take it from here. I know that you probably have a heck of a lot of future prototypes to explore and discard on your way to getting there. But I think I can speak for the community that we're really excited about what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, there are many prototypes that are waiting in the wings to be built maybe by next config. Hopefully sooner. But yeah, we're so excited that people can get their hands on Figma AI starting really soon. And we want to build it with the community and looking forward to your feedback.
Awesome. Well, Jordan, congrats on your first mega launch at Figma. It's awesome to see. And thanks for taking the time to come on today and give us the behind the scenes.
Thank you so much and pleasure meeting you.
Hey, it's Rid. Don't forget, if you want to go even deeper, each week I send an email out to over 10,000 designers with bonus resources and key takeaways from these conversations. So head to dive.club/email to sign up. Okay, I'll see you next week.